In this video, I'm looking at the C Audio Yume. I'm pretty sure that's how you say it, Yume, and apparently that translates to dream in Japanese. This is a triple driver hybrid IEM. It's got one dynamic driver, two balanced armature drivers, and let's get into it. What's cracking, audio fans? It's David here with Prime Audio Reviews. So you can see the box here. It's a pretty large box, and on the front is the C Audio mascot. Her name is Rinko. Yeah, you see her sort of influence throughout the brand. And on the back of the box, you've got a frequency response graph. It's pretty accurate. I'll show you mine as well later on. And a list of specs. I won't bore you with all of what's inside, but I will show you the cool little case that it comes with. You get a little metal carrying case, which is pretty handy, and you also get some cool little Rinko stickers. So if you're into that, there you go. So pretty neat. Anyway, let's get onto the earphones themselves, and here they are. This is the C Audio Yume. Yeah, so here they are. Pretty nice looking shells. They've got this sort of speckled green glittery type of design there. Your basic 3D printed resin. You can vaguely see the two balanced armature drivers through there. By the way, the price of the Yume is $169. You got an aluminium nozzle, a little vent there just in front of the 0.78mm 2-pin sockets. And yeah, overall the build quality is very nice. I think they're pretty attractive IEM. And in terms of comfort, they're pretty good as well. They fit nice into your ear. And on top of that, the noise isolation is pretty good as well. While we're here, we'll have a quick look at this cable. And this is a very nice little cable. It's a 5N OCC copper cable. And it handles very nicely. It's quite supple. And it drapes well. It's very well behaved, as you can see there. It sits just nicely. It's got aluminium 2-pin connector housings, Y-split and termination there. It's also got a little transparent plastic chin slider. So yeah, very nice cable. But anyway, it's time to move on to the sound. And how does a Yume sound? Is it like a dream? Or is it just a sleepy little bye-bye? Well, it's a bit of both in my opinion. You probably heard of these already, and so far they've had a fairly overwhelmingly positive response. And I don't quite get that, but we'll get to the reasons why as we go on through this video. So first of all, let's pop up the frequency response graph here, and there she is. So as you can see, we've got a Harman target. It's a bit of a cliche term, but there it is. Slightly different from the actual target, which I'll get into. But in a nutshell, you get a slightly elevated bass with an emphasis on the sub bass. You get fairly forward mid-range and a lifted upper mid-range and lower treble with a sort of a rolled off upper treble. Now for me, the standout characteristic of Yume's sound is the vocal presentation, which I think is one of the best I've heard in the price range. The vocal tone of these earphones is really, really superb. It sounds very nice, although male vocals may be a little bit on the thin or the dry side. But apart from that, yeah, vocals, they're nice and intimate, very natural tone, really nice sounding. But let's break it down, starting with the bass. And the bass of the Yume is a bit of a mixed bag for me. First of all, I do like the sub bass. I like the extension in the bass as well. It does create a satisfying little rumble there, and it does reach pretty deep. But from there, it kind of goes downhill. When you get to the mid bass, it's a little bit lesser. It's actually okay though. Like kick drums do have just enough impact. It's not a really weighted bass in the mid bass, but it does have enough punch and drive. It's very well defined kind of mid bass, quite fast in terms of speed overall. My problem I have with the bass is in the upper bass, and it's kind of scooped out a little bit early, and it leaves you with this kind of hollowness in the upper bass. And where that really affects the Yume is in the groove, it's in the musicality. For example, bass guitars just don't have that much body, they don't have that much presence, and there is a certain kind of emotional disconnect that I get from the Yume, and I think it is due to that sort of hollowed out upper bass. And I don't want to make this too subjective, but I just feel I should mention that, you know, when I listen to the Yume, if I listen to each individual part of the music, I can't really pick too much faults in it, especially the vocals. They sound fantastic, but the overall sound is just, it doesn't engage me. I just sort of feel dead inside when I listen to it. I don't get excited. I don't get into the music. I don't feel moved by it. And I'm pretty sure it's, yeah, once again, that upper bass. But the quality of the bass in terms of technicalities is actually very good. I just question the sort of the tonal balance in a sense. Moving on to the mid-range now, and I've already told you how great vocals sound with the Yume. So the vocals are quite intimate, they're quite forward and close to the listener, which does reduce the size of the soundstage to some extent. I'll talk a little bit about that later as well. Instruments sound pretty good. The overall resolution of the Yume is actually a little bit meh, if I may say. It's not the best. It's okay in slow passages or slower music or simpler music. When things get more complex, the Yume resolution starts to fall apart pretty quickly. And there's also, because of that upper mid-range lift, I don't know if other people experience this, but I get this kind of a weird in-head sort of resonance from certain things, certain sounds, maybe some guitars, female vocals in some cases, when they're belting, it sort of resonates uncomfortably in my head. That's probably just me, but I'm fairly sensitive to that 2 to 4 kilohertz region. But I won't go too into that now. I'm not going to make this an overly technical review. Just going to make it a fairly quick one actually, but overall the mids, they sound pretty good. But in terms of technical performance, the Yume is a little bit lacking in my opinion. So finally, that leaves us with the treble, and yeah, the emphasis is on the lower treble and the upper mid-range. After about 8 kilohertz, the treble starts to fall off pretty rapidly, and there's not a lot of upper treble presence. But despite that upper treble sort of roll-off, the Yume does have a somewhat bright tonality overall. It's a kind of a bright IM. When it comes to detail retrieval, it's pretty good in that regard, but the detail, like the resolution, falls apart when the music gets more complex. And the soundstage also suffers as well. The soundstage is fairly narrow in dimensions, and there's not a great deal of depth in the music either. So you get this kind of narrow wall of sound with not much layering in terms of depth. Imaging is quite vague. Everything is just sort of thrown together in the middle in a sense. There is some left and right stereo separation, but the soundstage and imaging are a little bit lacking, as is the resolution, although the detail for the most part is okay. So I've got a couple of IEMs here for a quick comparison. We'll start off with the Echo OH10, which differs the most in sound from these. The OH10 is a warmer IEM. It has a much bigger bass. It's got a really savage and deep rumbling sub bass to it. The bass is not as well controlled as the Yume, but it does lend that nice warmth and fullness and body to the sound, so it doesn't sound sort of thin or anemic. It's got a more traditional V-shaped sound signature, but it still has nice detail. It has a very nice soundstage actually, and of course it has these beautiful metal shells as well. But these are two very different sounding IEMs. My personal preference would be for the OH10 in this case. Here is the Moondrop or the KXXS, as some people like to call it. And yeah, this has a different kind of sound as well. It's got a little bit more body to it, a little bit more warmth in the bass. The bass is more emphasized. The mid-range is a bit more recessed. So this is, again, more of a traditional V-shaped signature. but like the Yume, this also has a slightly lifted upper mid-range, but not to the same extent as the Yume. So this is a sort of a more mellow sounding earphone. It's not as intense as this one. It is kind of a laid-back sound. It's a very spacious, open sound, and it does have a better upper treble extension than the Yume as well, so it's quite airy as well. Again, my preference from these two would probably go to the KXXS here. And finally, this is the Audio Legacy 4. And actually, these are not all that different in terms of frequency response. They are fairly similar. I'll even throw up the graph for you here, and you can see they follow a fairly similar curve. The difference being that the Legacy 4 has a little bit more fullness in the upper bass. The upper mids aren't pushed quite as far forward. And although they sort of share a fairly similar kind of sound, the key difference here is the Legacy 4 has a little bit of extra warmth and body in the upper bass, and that really makes a difference for me. If I had to choose one of these as a daily driver, it would be the Legacy 4. If I was listening specifically to vocals and podcasts, I would choose the Yume. Okay, so to sum up, the Audio Yume for $169. Yeah, I think it's a reasonable price. The overall package is pretty good, and I know a lot of people actually like the sound signature of these. It's not my cup of tea, but of course that is only my subjective opinion, and when I look at these objectively, they do a lot of things very well. Maybe not the strongest in terms of technicalities, but for the overall package, I think they're a pretty good deal. I am very interested to see what Audio does going forward, and I'm sure they'll do some really, really good stuff. So that's about it for this video, guys. There is a link to the full written review down in the description, along with links to all my social media channels. If you got any value from this video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel and want to see more reviews like this in the future, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And until next time, I'll see you later.